I smoothed my apron for the 100th time, trying to calm my nerves as I listened to the raised voices coming from the living room. It was happening again. Sam and his mother were at it, their argument echoing through our shared home. "You can't keep meddling in our lives, Mom." Sam's voice cracked with frustration. "I'm not meddling, I'm helping," his mother retorted. "Someone has to keep this family together." I sighed, setting down the dish I'd been drying. It was always like this. Ever since Sam's parents moved in with us last year, the tension had been building. I'd tried to be the perfect daughter-in-law, but nothing seemed good enough for Margaret. The kitchen door swung open and Sam stormed in, his face flushed. "Abby, I can't take it anymore. She's driving me crazy." I reached out to touch his arm. "What happened this time?" He ran a hand through his hair. "She's been going through our bills, can you believe it? Says we're not managing our money right." "What?" I felt my own anger rising. "That's none of her business." I know. Sam leaned against the counter, deflated. "I told her to back off, but you know how she is." The kitchen door opened again, and Margaret swept in, her eyes narrowing when she saw us together. "Samuel, we're not finished discussing this." I stepped forward, forcing a smile. "Margaret, maybe we could all sit down and talk about this calmly?" She turned her steely gaze on me. "Abigail, dear, this is a family matter. Why don't you go finish the dishes?" I felt my cheeks burn. "I am family, Margaret. I'm your son's wife." "Of course you are," she said, her tone dismissive. "But you don't understand how things work in our family." Sam put his arm around me. "Mom, that's enough. Abby's right. We should all talk about this together." Margaret's lips thinned. "Fine, let's sit down then." We moved to the dining room, the tension thick in the air. I sat next to Sam, across from his parents. His father, Robert, looked uncomfortable, his eyes darting between us. "Now," Margaret began, folding her hands on the table, "I think it's time we discuss the family finances." I couldn't hold back anymore. "With all due respect, Margaret, our finances are not your concern." She laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "Oh, but they are, dear. You see, this house, it's still in our name." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What?" Sam turned to his father. "Dad, is that true?" Robert cleared his throat. "Well, yes, we never got around to transferring the deed." "You told us this was our house," I exclaimed, my voice rising. "We've been paying the mortgage." Margaret smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "And we appreciate that, but as long as our name is on the deed, we have a say in how things are run here." I looked at Sam, expecting him to protest, but he was staring at the table, his jaw clenched. "Sam?" I whispered, my heart pounding. He finally looked up, his eyes filled with a mix of anger and defeat. "I'm sorry, Abby, I didn't know." In that moment, something shifted. I saw my husband and his family in a new, unsettling light. This wasn't just about bills or a house. This was about control, about power. As I sat there, stunned into silence, I realized that everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, was built on shifting sand. And for the first time since I'd married into this family, I felt a spark of something dangerous ignite within me. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. "Excuse me," I muttered, fleeing the room. As I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, I heard Margaret's voice floating up behind me. "See, Samuel? This is why we need to step in. She clearly can't handle adult conversations." I closed the door behind me, leaning against it as tears threatened to spill. But beneath the hurt and betrayal, a new feeling was taking root. Determination. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. I couldn't sleep that night, tossing and turning as memories flooded my mind. Each recollection was like a piece of a puzzle, finally falling into place to reveal a picture I'd been too blind to see. The first Thanksgiving after our wedding, when Margaret accidentally spilled cranberry sauce on my new tablecloth. "Oh, Abigail," she'd said, her voice dripping with false sympathy, "you really should use better quality linens. These cheap ones stain so easily." Sam's birthday last year, when she'd taken over the party planning. "It's just that I know what Samuel likes," she'd explained, patting my hand condescendingly. "You'll learn eventually, dear." And just last month, when she'd rearranged our entire kitchen while I was out grocery shopping, "I couldn't stand to see it so disorganized," she'd said, ignoring my shocked expression. "Now it's much more efficient." I sat up in bed, my heart racing. How had I not seen it before? The constant criticism, the undermining, the control, it wasn't just annoying behavior, it was manipulation. The next morning, I found Sam in the kitchen, looking exhausted. "Hey," he said, barely meeting my eyes. "About last night." I cut him off. "Why didn't you tell me about the house, Sam?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I honestly didn't know, Abby. Dad always said it would be ours." "But you never checked? Never thought to ask for the paperwork?" "I trusted them," he said, his voice small. "They're my parents." I felt a surge of frustration. "And what about trusting me? Your wife?" Before he could answer, Margaret swept into the kitchen. "Good morning, dears. Samuel, I've been thinking about what we discussed last night. I think it's time we had a family meeting about the household budget." I gritted my teeth. "Margaret, we've already told you." Now, she interrupted, holding up a hand. "Let's not get emotional. This is about what's best for the family." I looked at Sam, silently pleading for him to stand up to her. He cleared his throat. "Mom, maybe we could discuss this later?" "Nonsense," she said briskly. "There's no time like the present," she called out. "Come down here, please. We're having a family meeting." As Robert shuffled in, looking uncomfortable, I felt something inside me snap. "No," I said firmly. "We're not having a family meeting. Not now, not ever." Margaret's eyes widened in shock. "I beg your pardon?" "You heard me," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "This is our home, our life. You don't get to make decisions for us anymore." "Abigail," she gasped, clutching her chest dramatically. "How dare you speak to me like that? After everything we've done for you?" I laughed bitterly. "Done for me? You mean criticizing every decision I make, undermining my role in this family, making me feel like I don't belong in my own home?" Sam stepped forward, his face pale. "Abby, calm down. Let's not say things we'll regret." I turned to him, my eyes blazing. "And you? When are you going to stand up to her, Sam? When are you going to choose our marriage over her control?" The kitchen fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Margaret's face had turned an alarming shade of red, while Robert looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Sam opened his mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. "No, I'm done talking. I'm done pretending everything is fine when it's not. Something has to change, and it has to change now." With that, I stormed out of the kitchen, my heart pounding. As I climbed the stairs, I heard Margaret's shrill voice behind me. "Samuel, are you going to let her speak to me like that? To us? Your family?" I paused at the top of the stairs, waiting for Sam's response. The silence stretched on, broken only by the sound of my own ragged breathing. Finally, I heard his voice, quiet but clear. "Mom, I think Abby's right. We need to talk about some changes." As I closed the bedroom door behind me, I felt a mix of emotions swirling inside me. Anger, fear, but also a glimmer of hope. The battle lines had been drawn. Now it was time to fight for my marriage, my home, and my self-respect. Little did I know this was just the beginning of a war that would change everything. I needed to get out of the house. The tension was suffocating, and I could feel Margaret's disapproving glare burning into my back every time I passed her. I grabbed my gardening gloves and headed for the backyard, hoping some fresh air would clear my head. As I knelt in the dirt, yanking out weeds with more force than necessary, I heard a familiar voice call out. "Abigail? Everything all right over there?" I looked up to see Ellen, my next-door neighbor, peering over the fence. Her kind face was creased with concern. "Oh, Ellen," I sighed, brushing the dirt from my hands. "I don't even know where to start." She opened the gate between our yards and came to sit beside me on the garden bench. "Well, honey, why don't you try the beginning?" The words tumbled out of me like a dam bursting. I told her everything. The revelation about the house, Margaret's constant interference, Sam's inability to stand up to his mother. By the time I finished, tears were streaming down my face. Ellen handed me a tissue from her pocket. "Oh, Abigail, I had no idea things were so bad." "I didn't either," I admitted. "Or maybe I did and I just didn't want to see it." She patted my hand. "It's not your fault, dear. Some people are masters at manipulation. They can make you doubt your own mind." I nodded, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. Finally, someone understood. "The question is," Ellen continued, her voice gentle but firm, "what are you going to do about it?" I took a deep breath. I think we need to move out, start fresh, just Sam and me." Ellen's eyebrows shot up. "That's a big step. Have you talked to Sam about this?" Before I could answer, I heard the back door slam. Sam strode across the yard, his face tight with anger. "Abby!" We need to talk. Now. I stood up, my heart racing. Sam, what's wrong? He glanced at Ellen, then back at me. Inside, please. I followed him into the house, throwing an apologetic look at Ellen over my shoulder. As soon as the door closed behind us, Sam rounded on me. What did you say to my mother? He demanded. I blinked, taken aback. What? I haven't said anything to her since this morning. Well, she's upstairs crying her eyes out, saying you've turned the whole family against her. I felt a surge of anger. Are you kidding me? After everything she's done, she's playing the victim? Sam ran a hand through his hair, frustration etched on his face. Look, I know things have been tense, but she's still my mother. You can't just... Can't what, Sam? I interrupted. Can't stand up for myself? Can't expect to be treated with respect in my own home? That's not what I meant, he backpedaled. I just think we need to handle this delicately. I laughed bitterly. Delicately? Like how she's been so delicate in tearing me down for years? Sam's face softened. Abby, please, let's just calm down and... No, I said firmly. I'm done calming down. I'm done pretending everything is okay when it's not. We need to make a change, Sam, a big one. His eyes narrowed. What are you saying? I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I'm saying we need to move out, find our own place, just the two of us. The color drained from Sam's face. Move out, but this is our home, our family. Your family, I corrected, not mine. Never mine, according to your mother. Sam opened his mouth to respond, but was cut off by a shrill voice from upstairs. Samuel, who are you talking to down there? We both froze, staring at each other. In that moment, I saw something shift in Sam's eyes. A flicker of understanding, maybe even agreement. But before he could speak, Margaret appeared at the top of the stairs, her eyes red and puffy. Oh, she said, her voice dripping with false surprise. It's you, Abigail. I thought I heard voices. As she descended the stairs, I felt my resolve harden. This was it, the moment of truth. I looked at Sam, silently pleading with him to stand with me, to choose our marriage over his mother's manipulation. His gaze darted between me and Margaret, indecision written all over his face. And in that suspended moment, with the air thick with tension, I realized that everything, my marriage, my future, my sanity, hinged on what happened next. I couldn't sleep that night, my mind racing with the confrontation that was to come. As the first light of dawn crept through the curtains, I made my decision. It was time to talk to Sam, really talk to him, about our future. I found him in the kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee. His eyes were rimmed with dark circles, mirroring my own sleepless night. Sam, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, we need to talk about what happened yesterday. He nodded, gesturing for me to sit. I know, Abby. I've been thinking about it all night. I took a deep breath. I meant what I said. We need to move out, set some boundaries with your parents. Sam's grip tightened on his mug. Abby, that's a big step. This is our home. Is it? I interrupted. Because from where I'm standing, it feels like we're just guests in your parents' house. Guests who pay the mortgage, but still have no say. He flinched at my words. That's not fair. They've done a lot for us. And we're grateful, I said, trying to keep my voice level. But Sam, can't you see how your mother's behavior is tearing us apart? We need our own space, our own life. Sam ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized as a sign of his internal struggle. I hear you, Abby. I do. But they're my family. I can't just abandon them. And what about me? I asked, my voice cracking. Aren't I your family too? The silence that followed was deafening. I watched emotions play across Sam's face. Guilt, confusion, and something else I couldn't quite name. Finally, he spoke. Of course you are. You're my wife. I love you. Then prove it, I said, reaching across the table to take his hand. Stand with me on this. Let's start our life together, just us. Sam opened his mouth to respond, but was cut off by the sound of footsteps on the stairs. Margaret appeared in the doorway, her eyes narrowing as she took in our clasped hands. Good morning, she said, her voice syrupy sweet. I hope I'm not interrupting anything. I felt Sam's hand tense in mine, but I didn't let go. Actually, Margaret, we were just discussing... Oh, I'm sure it can wait, she interrupted, bustling into the kitchen. Samuel, dear, I need your help with something in the garage. That old chest of drawers is just too heavy for your father and me to move. I saw the conflict in Sam's eyes as he looked between his mother and me. My heart sank as he slowly pulled his hand away. I'll be right there, Mom, he said, not meeting my gaze. As Margaret swept out of the room, Sam turned to me. "We'll finish this conversation later, okay?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As he left the kitchen, I felt a surge of determination. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I spent the rest of the morning in a daze, going through the motions of my daily routine while my mind raced with plans. By the time lunch rolled around, I had made up my mind. I found Sam in the backyard, tinkering with the lawnmower. "We need to talk?" I said, my voice firm. "Now." He looked up. Surprise etched on his face. "Abby, I told you we'd finish our conversation later." "No," I cut him off. "We're doing this now. I've made a decision, Sam. If you won't move out with me, then I'll go alone." His face paled. "What? Abby, you can't be serious." "I've never been more serious in my life," I said, my heart pounding. "I love you, Sam, but I can't live like this anymore. Something has to change, and if you won't make that change with me, then I'll have to do it on my own." As the weight of my words settled between us, I saw a flicker of something in Sam's eyes. Fear, maybe, or realization. This was it, the moment that would define our future. "So," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "what's it going to be, Sam? Are you with me, or not?" The ball was in his court now, and as I stood there, heart in my throat, I knew that whatever his answer, nothing would ever be the same again. The silence that followed my ultimatum seemed to stretch for an eternity. Sam's face was a canvas of conflicting emotions, shock, fear, and something that looked almost like admiration. Finally he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Abby, I don't want to lose you." I felt a glimmer of hope. "Then come with me, Sam. Let's start fresh, just the two of us." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times before. "It's not that simple. They're my parents, Abby. I can't just abandon them." "And what about me?" I countered, my voice rising. "Am I supposed to just accept being treated like a second-class citizen in my own home?" Sam flinched at my words. "No, of course not. But maybe if we talk to them, explain how we're feeling." I cut him off with a bitter laugh. "Talk to them? Sam, we've been trying to talk to them for years. Nothing changes." Just then we heard the back door open. Margaret's voice floated out to us. "Samuel, are you out here? I need your help with something." I saw the conflict in Sam's eyes as he glanced towards the house. I should go see what she needs. Something inside me snapped. "No, Sam, you need to stay here and finish this conversation with your wife." His eyes widened at my tone. "Abby, Samuel." Margaret's voice was more insistent now. Sam looked torn, his gaze darting between me and the house. I held my breath, waiting for his decision. To my surprise, he called out, "Just a minute, Mom. I'm talking to Abby." I felt a surge of hope, but it was short-lived. Margaret appeared at the back door, her eyes narrowing as she took in the scene. "What's going on out here?" she demanded, striding towards us. I straightened my spine, ready for the confrontation. "We're discussing our future, Margaret. Sam and I are thinking about moving out." The color drained from Margaret's face. "Moving out? But why? This is your home." "Is it?" I challenged. "Because it feels more like your home, where Sam and I just happen to live." Margaret's eyes flashed with anger. "How dare you, after everything we've done for you?" "That's enough, Mom," Sam interrupted, his voice firmer than I'd ever heard it. "Abby's right. We need our own space." I felt a surge of pride and love for my husband in that moment. But Margaret wasn't done. "Samuel, you can't be serious. What about your father and me? We need you here." Sam's resolve seemed to waver. "We won't be far, Mom. We just need." "Need what?" Margaret's voice was shrill now. "To abandon your family? Is that what she's convinced you to do?" I'd had enough. "Stop it, Margaret. This isn't about abandoning anyone. It's about Sam and I having our own life." Margaret turned on me, her eyes blazing. You've poisoned my son against us. I knew from the day he brought you home that you'd try to tear this family apart." "Mom," Sam's voice was sharp. "That's enough." But Margaret was on a roll. "If you leave this house, Samuel, don't bother coming back. You'll no longer be welcome here." The silence that followed was deafening. I looked at Sam, my heart pounding. This was it, the moment of truth. Sam's face was pale, his eyes wide with shock. He looked from his mother to me, indecision written all over his features. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to say. "Sam, I love you. But I can't live like this anymore. If you choose to stay, I'll understand. But I'm leaving, with or without you." The ball was in Sam's court now. As I stood there, heart in my throat, I knew that his next words would determine the course of our future. The tension in the air was palpable as Sam opened his mouth to speak. The tension in the room was suffocating as Sam's words hung in the air. "We're moving out," he said, his voice firm but tinged with sadness. "Abby and I need our own space." Margaret's face contorted with rage. "How dare you, after everything we've done for you?" I stepped forward, my heart pounding. "This isn't about what you've done for us, Margaret. It's about what we need to do for our marriage." Sam's father, Robert, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Now let's all calm down and discuss this rationally." But Margaret was beyond reason. "Rational? There's nothing rational about abandoning your family. This is all her doing." She pointed an accusing finger at me. I felt a surge of anger. "Stop blaming me for everything, Margaret. Your son is capable of making his own decisions." Sam put a hand on my arm, his touch steadying me. "Mom, this isn't Abby's fault. We've both decided this is what's best for us." Margaret's eyes filled with tears, but I could see the calculation behind them. "Samuel, if you walk out that door, don't bother coming back. You'll no longer be welcome in this house." I watched Sam's face, my heart in my throat. This was the moment of truth. To my relief and pride, Sam stood his ground. "If that's how you feel, Mom, then I guess this is goodbye." As we turned to leave, Margaret's voice stopped us cold. "Fine, go, but don't think you'll get away with this. That house belongs to us, remember? You'll have nothing." I froze, the implications of her words sinking in. We'd been paying the mortgage, but the deed was still in their name. How could I have forgotten that crucial detail? Sam's face paled. "Mom, you wouldn't." "Try me," she hissed. Robert stepped forward, looking uncomfortable. "Margaret, maybe we should." "Stay out of this, Robert," she snapped. I felt a wave of desperation wash over me. Everything we'd worked for, everything we'd built, was slipping away. But I refused to let Margaret win. "Fine," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Keep the house. We'll start over somewhere else." Sam looked at me, surprise and admiration in his eyes. "Abby, are you sure?" I nodded, squeezing his hand. "We have each other. That's all that matters." As we packed our belongings, the atmosphere in the house was thick with tension. Margaret alternated between icy silence and tearful pleas, while Robert hovered uncertainly in the background. Just as we were about to leave, Ellen appeared at the door. "I heard raised voices," she said, concern etched on her face. "Is everything okay?" I felt a rush of gratitude for my friend. "We're leaving, Ellen, for good." Understanding dawned in her eyes. She pulled me into a tight hug. "You're doing the right thing, honey. Stay strong." As we loaded the last of our boxes into the car, I saw Robert approach Sam. They spoke in hushed tones, and I saw Sam nod gravely. "What was that about?" I asked as he slid into the driver's seat. Sam sighed. "Dad slipped me some cash, said he was sorry about everything." I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe not all family ties were severed. As we pulled out of the driveway, I saw Margaret watching from the window, her face a mask of anger and hurt. Part of me wanted to feel triumphant, but mostly I just felt sad for her. We drove in silence for a while, the weight of what we'd done settling over us. Finally, Sam spoke. "Where do we go from here, Abby?" I took a deep breath, realizing I didn't have all the answers. We had no home, little money, and an uncertain future. But we had each other, and that gave me strength. "I don't know exactly," I said, reaching for his hand, "but we'll figure it out together." As we drove towards an unknown future, I felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. We'd taken a huge risk, but for the first time in years I felt truly free. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew we'd face them side by side. Little did I know, the biggest challenge was yet to come. The small apartment we'd rented felt claustrophobic as I paced back and forth, rehearsing the lines I'd prepared. Sam would be home any minute, and I had to make this convincing. My heart raced as I heard his key in the lock. "Abby?" Sam called out as he entered. "I'm home." I took a deep breath and stepped into view, my face a mask of anger. "We need to talk, Sam." He froze, sensing the tension in my voice. "What's wrong?" I can't do this anymore," I said, my voice trembling with feigned emotion. "Living like this, cut off from your family, it's tearing me apart." Confusion flickered across Sam's face. "But Abby, this was your idea. You wanted to leave." "I know what I said," I snapped, internally wincing at the hurt in his eyes. "But I was wrong. We've lost everything, Sam. Our home, our security, your family." Sam reached for me, but I stepped back. Abby, please, we can work this out. Just then, right on cue, Sam's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, his face paling. It's Mom, I gestured sharply. Answer it. Put it on speaker. He hesitated, then complied. Margaret's voice filled the room, shrill and demanding. Samuel? Are you there? We need to talk about this ridiculous situation you've gotten yourself into. I watched Sam's face, seeing the conflict in his eyes. Mom, now's not a good time. Nonsense, Margaret interrupted. It's time you came to your senses and came home. You've made your point. Now it's time to stop this foolishness and remember where your loyalties lie. I saw Sam's resolve wavering, and for a moment I feared I'd pushed too far. But then he straightened his shoulders. Mom, I've told you. Abby and I made this decision together. We're not coming back. Margaret's voice turned cold. Is that her talking, or you? Because the Samuel I raised would never turn his back on his family like this. I stepped closer to the phone, my heart pounding. That's enough. Margaret, Sam can make his own decisions. You! Margaret hissed. I knew you were behind all this. You've poisoned my son against us. Well, let me tell you something, Abigail. You might think you've won, but this isn't over. Not by a long shot. The line went dead, leaving us in stunned silence. Sam turned to me, his face a mix of emotions. Abby, I'm so sorry. I never thought she'd go this far. I let my carefully constructed mask slip, revealing the fear and uncertainty beneath. What are we going to do, Sam? She's right. We've lost everything. He pulled me into his arms, and I felt a pang of guilt for my deception. We have each other, he murmured. That's all that matters. As I buried my face in his chest, I heard a sharp knock at the door. We froze, looking at each other in alarm. Sam? Abigail? Are you in there? It was Robert's voice, sounding urgent. Sam opened the door, revealing his father's worried face. Dad, what are you doing here? Robert stepped inside, his eyes darting between us. I had to warn you. Your mother, she's not thinking clearly. She's talking about contesting the mortgage payments, claiming you two were just tenants. She wants to take legal action. I felt the blood drain from my face. She can't do that. We paid for that house. Robert shook his head sadly. I'm afraid she can. The deed is still in our names. Sam's face hardened. This has gone too far. We need to stop her. I nodded, my resolve strengthening. You're right. It's time to end this, once and for all. As we huddled together, planning our next move, I realized that my staged falling out had taken on a life of its own. The lines between deception and reality had blurred, and now everything truly was at stake. I looked at Sam, seeing the determination in his eyes, and knew that whatever came next, we'd face it together. But as Robert filled us in on Margaret's plans, a chill ran down my spine. The real battle was just beginning, and I wasn't sure if we were ready for what lay ahead. The courtroom was silent as we waited for the judge to return with her decision. Sam's hand gripped mine tightly, his palms sweaty with nervous anticipation. Across the aisle, Margaret sat rigid, her eyes fixed straight ahead, while Robert slumped beside her, looking defeated. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of legal battles and emotional turmoil. Margaret had made good on her threats, contesting our claim to the house and accusing us of financial misconduct. But her plan had backfired spectacularly when Robert, pushed to his breaking point, had revealed years of Margaret's own financial deceit. As the judge re-entered the courtroom, I held my breath. This was it, the moment that would determine our future. In the matter of property ownership and financial claims, the judge began, her voice steady, I find in favor of Samuel and Abigail. A collective gasp rippled through the room. I felt Sam's arm wrap around me as relief washed over us both. The judge continued, Furthermore, given the evidence of financial misconduct presented by Mr. Robert Thompson, I am ordering a full audit of the family's finances. I watched as the color drained from Margaret's face. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked truly defeated. As we left the courthouse, Robert approached us hesitantly. Sam, Abigail, can we talk? We nodded, following him to a quiet corner. Robert's shoulders sagged as he turned to face us. I owe you both an apology, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I should have seen what Margaret was doing, how she was tearing this family apart. I was too weak, too afraid to stand up to her. Sam put a hand on his father's shoulder. It's okay, Dad. You did the right thing in the end. Robert shook his head. No, it's not okay, but I want to make it right. He turned to me, his eyes filled with remorse. Abigail, I'm so sorry for everything you've been through. Can you ever forgive me? I felt tears welling up in my eyes. Of course, Robert. Your family. As Robert pulled us both into a hug, I caught sight of Margaret over his shoulder. She stood alone, watching us with a mixture of anger and longing on her face. For a moment, I felt a twinge of pity. Then I remembered all the pain she'd caused, and I turned away. That evening, as Sam and I sat in our small apartment, surrounded by boxes ready for our move back into our rightful home, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I have a confession to make, I said, turning to Sam, his eyebrows raised in question. That fight we had when your dad showed up, I staged it. I thought if I could make your mother show her true colors, you'd finally see how toxic she was. I held my breath, waiting for his reaction. To my surprise, Sam laughed. Oh, Abby, he said, pulling me close. I knew. You knew? I gasped. But how? He smiled, a hint of mischief in his eyes. Because I know you, and I love you, every clever, determined inch of you. As we sat there, planning our future free from Margaret's oppressive influence, I realized that we'd gained so much more than just a house. We'd reclaimed our independence, our self-respect, and our right to live life on our own terms. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There were still wounds to heal, trust to rebuild. But as I looked at Sam, I knew we could face anything together. So, I said, a smile playing on my lips, ready for our next adventure? Sam grinned, pulling me in for a kiss. With you? Always. As we sealed our promise with that kiss, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. We'd weathered the storm, emerged stronger, and now, finally, we were free to write our own story. The future stretched out before us, full of possibility and hope, and I couldn't wait to see where it would take us next.